Well, the first task in front of us is codenamed Snowman, and its purpose is mainly to get familiar with the 3D editing software. The assignment is to create a 3D scene, but we can only use primitive objects and transformation tools. If it's necessary, we can also use Boolean operations, symmetry and bevel, but we are strictly forbidden from editing the mesh itself. Okay, let's open the 3D software of your choice. In my case, it's Blender 2.8. First, you need to locate the 3D viewport, where you can see the representation of your scene, the menu through which you can create new objects, inspector, where you can edit whatever parameter you want, and finally the transformation tools for changing the position, rotation and scale. Quick tip for your future self: when you see a shortcut assigned to a function, try to force yourself to use the shortcut. It will make you infinitely faster in the future. One of the most important things that you need to get used to is navigation in the 3D viewport. In Blender, it's performed by holding down the middle mouse button itself, or with combination of middle mouse button and Shift or Control. In other packages, it's usually a combination of Alt and mouse buttons. Also, pretty much all 3D editors have helpful gizmos somewhere in the corner. If you are more familiar with controls in FPS games, you will find useful the fly mode, which you can activate with Shift plus tilde. It's the one in front of numbers on your keyboard. As you can see, when you want to add some objects to the scene, you have to choose what type of object it will be: camera, text, light, metaball, etc. In this assignment, we are restricted to only use objects of type mesh, or if you are using Wonder Mesh add-on, which you can download in the description, you can also use type primitive. Okay, let's start adding objects. But it's always nice to start with empty scene, so I will select everything and delete it. Then, because I want to make a snowman, I will add a sphere. If you understandably don't like the weird shading, just right click and choose Shade Smooth. For me, this will be the base of the snowman that will sit on the ground. Well, we need a ground. Simple plane should be sufficient enough. It just needs to be a little bit bigger and the sphere needs to be higher. Just one ball is pretty set snowman, so we need more spheres. We can of course add new ones, but since we already have one, we can just duplicate it. There is several ways to do that. The one that you are probably already familiar with is Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. The other one that is probably more commonly used is Shift-D. That creates the duplicate and immediately activates the translation tool. The third option is to use Alt-D, which does pretty much the same thing as the previous command, but instead of copy, it creates instance. That means it shares the geometry data with the original object, which is very efficient for a computer as long as the instances have the same shape. As you can see, freehand manipulation is nice and useful, but sometimes you want to put objects to some exact coordinates, so the snowman isn't all over the place. You can find all objects properties in the inspector, where the most important ones are probably the name and the transformation metrics. And of course, you can edit them directly. You can even put their mathematical formulas, or if you know Python, you can write there whatever you can cram to one line. But I am getting too much ahead now. If you don't like what you did, you can always go back with Ctrl+Z, or just hover over the property and hit backspace. It will reset it to the default value. Now proper snowman needs a head. Let's put a cylinder to the scene and place it where it should be. The shading is flat again, but this time simple smooth shading won't save us, because we want some edges to actually stay sharp. Go to the inspector again for the mesh data itself and find settings for auto smooth normals. As with everything else, more info and proper explanations will be in class. This should be pod, so I will create a handle from simple torus. I would like to rotate it exactly 90 degrees, so I will hold Ctrl while rotating, or write the exact number to the tool afterwards. By the way, if you are not already, slowly get used to the radians. it will definitely help you later. Now hence, if you have access to the primitives, you should have to your disposal the capsule shape. If not, you can use simple cylinder and one of the modifiers that is allowed, specifically bevel modifier. If you just add it to the cylinder, it will try to bevel all the edges at once, and that's definitely not what we want. Click on the angle limit method, so it will bevel only the sharp edges. Now you can set huge width and add more segments to make it round. If you are using this method, you need to be aware of the scaling of the object, because scaling in just one axis will change the shape of the bevel. Solution is simple, but you have to remember it. Just after the scaling, apply the transformation to the object. When we are in the modifiers territory, we can also use another one. Because I want the same hand on the other side, I will use the mirror modifier. Without any further settings, the object is mirrored on itself. That's why we don't see any change. But we can set another object to act as a mirror. The sphere in the middle should work fine in this case. Adding a nose should be super simple, without any tricks. The buttons are simple too, but for easy placement it will be useful to see the scene from the side orthographic view. The eyes are a little bit more tricky, but we can help ourselves by using snapping. That's the little magnet on top. By default the objects will snap to the grid, but we can change it and set the snapping to the surface of other objects. The other eye can be generated with the mirror modifier again. And with the snapping still active, I will quickly create a nice smile without the mirroring, so we can play with variations. Don't forget to turn the snapping off when you no longer need it. I almost forget about the broom. There is nothing new to show there, so I will just quickly put together one. At the end, I will do final touch with some slight random rotations and the snowman is done. But don't forget, we need the whole scene. We need to put him somewhere. If you look to the scene hierarchy, you can see that everything we've done is inside a collection. We can rename it to snowman and hide it for a while. That will give us a free space to play with some other objects. I would like to put some trees around my snowman, so I will make one really simple now. Before I start, I have to make a new collection for my tree. When the simplified tree is done, I can hide it and bring back the snowman. Now when I go to add a new object to the scene, I should see option to add my new tree as a whole collection. I will just duplicate the tree around, randomize the scale a little, and I think that I'm done. The scene just definitely needs some colors before I can hand it in. In this first project we won't worry about any lighting, materials or rendering, just change the shading color to object, and now when you select something you can go to the object settings in the inspector and under viewport display change the color to your desire. If you want more than one object to share the same color, you can either copy the color with Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, or you can select more objects at once, pick whatever color you want and right click, copy to select it. When you are satisfied with your scene, find some nice view, turn off the overlays and render the viewport. Be careful there, do not go to the render menu, but to the view menu. We don't want actual render, we want just glorified screenshot. Don't forget to save the image and the project file. Well, that wasn't hard at all. Now go make your own scenes. I don't want to see any snowmans in the submissions.